Hello. So today I want to do something a little bit different. I'm going to become an evangelist of sorts for a particular movie. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. The beloved movie of mine that I'm talking about is 2004's The Village by M. Night Shyamalan. So last year we got 4K releases of both Signs and The Sixth Sense. And for probably a year now, there's been a rumor in the ether by, I think, the quote comes from Joe Blow Media, and it quotes Shyamalan as saying, "I'm working on the 4K of The Village." Like I said, it's been, I think, almost a year since that quote came out, and I haven't really seen much about it since then. So that got me a little nervous, and it just made me want to make a video about The Village and my love for The Village so that maybe I can speak some good energy into the ether. From what I understand, Disney owns the rights to The Village, and sometimes Disney is slow moving these types of projects. They like to sit on movies. So basically, what I wanted to do is just give my personal history with this movie, The Village, why it's important to me. And I also wanted to talk about why I think it is one of Shyamalan's better films. And I apologize, I am sitting in front of a window, so the lighting is a little bit dynamic, but let's just say it adds to the ambiance of this video. So one thing to understand is that my opinion of this movie is no doubt clouded by a little bit of nostalgia. I was probably 8 to 10 years old when I first saw this movie, and I saw it with my grandparents. Specifically, my grandmother, for some reason, got a hold of this movie and we watched it together, which still kind of blows my mind. I don't know how she came about this film. I don't know why we watched it together, but we did. And it was one of the first films that I had ever seen that was creepy, that was like horror-esque. You know, it's not really horror, but to my young self, it was the closest thing I had ever seen to horror. And to this day, I love psychological thrillers and horror. And so it really whetted my appetite for this kind of film. And to add to kind of the backdrop of me seeing this film for the first time, the grandparents that I saw it with lived in Pennsylvania, where this film is set. And if you're familiar with the story of The Village has, I would say, a lot of parallels to the real life Amish and Mennonite communities that are very active in Pennsylvania. So my experience and understanding of this film, I think, were very closely tied with Pennsylvania, with kind of the reality of there being separated religious communities that did their own thing. And so that, I think, added just a lot of realism to this movie that I still appreciate to this day. There was a historic site not that far from where my grandparents lived called the Ephrata Cloister. And this was a rather devout religious community that kind of sequestered themselves from everybody else and had some very specific rituals and beliefs. And I don't think they were nearly as isolated as the people in the village. But again, this backdrop of me being in this area where all this history and this heritage is really added depth to the film. Another reason that I think this movie is so significant in my cinematic life, if you will, is this was the first movie I think that I really started to understand that characters and stories could have nuance, that one thing could be presented and other things could be going on in the background. Now, going forward, there might be spoilers for The Village, so if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go watch it, and you can come back to this video. If you have seen it, hopefully you'll be able to interpret kind of what I'm saying. I would say a pivotal moment in my life in being able to understand and interpret cinema came about around this character in The Village named Edward Walker. He's played by William Hurt. In my young mind, being raised religious, when I first saw this movie, I saw William Hurt's character, Edward Walker, as kind of a beacon of purity and innocence and goodness, and he just wanted to do the right thing, and his intentions were completely pure. And you may chuckle at that. I laugh at that as an adult because obviously I understand that there's way more going on in this movie, and it's not nearly that simplistic, and in fact, that's maybe not even a good representation of reality in the movie. But that's how I saw it when I first viewed this film. And so for the longest time, I really admired this character, Edward Walker. There's a line in the film in which he says,
Yes, I have risked. I hope I am always able to risk everything for the just and right cause.
and this really stuck with me. I was like, oh man, that is such a, that's such a statement of goodness and good intention. And he's just standing up. He's being the righteous man that he should be. And it was fascinating because in subsequent watches of this film, and by the way, I remember walking down Blockbuster aisles looking for this film years later. But it was interesting because as I became a teenager and I got older and older and watched this film more and more, I started to realize something very disturbing to my young self, to my young moral self, right? I realized that Edward Walker in this movie is not someone who should be emulated. He's not somebody who's a good example. He's actually the exact opposite. He is someone who is a coward. He is someone who has regret. And he's someone who, at the end of the day, can't face reality. And this was just such an interesting progression to experience in my own mind because as a young kid who didn't really understand how to watch films, I had one impression of this character, that he was just all good. As I grew older, I realized that it's almost the complete opposite, or it's at least a lot more gray than it is black and white. There's a particular scene where Edward Walker is speaking to Lucius Hunt after Lucius has disobeyed the advice of the council or the elders, and he has walked into the Forbidden Forest. And Edward Walker says to Lucius Hunt, he says,
"You are fearless in a way that I shall never know."
and again, me watching this for the first time, I was like, oh, he's being so kind to Lucius, what a great guy. In subsequent years of watching the film, I started to think about that. I was like, maybe he's showing his cards a little bit here. Maybe he's revealing something that is true about himself and something that he regrets. Again, I have to emphasize that there's going to be spoilers here because this involves kind of the twist ending of the film. For those of you who have seen the film, you'll remember that the twist ending of The Village is that the film is taking place in modern day and not in the 1800s. And William Hurt's character, Edward Walker, and a cohort of his friends who had all experienced some kind of horrible tragedy in their lives, they started the village as a group of elders to basically cut themselves off from the modern world and the tragedy of life outside. And they made their own little slice of heaven, essentially, trying to keep everything horrible outside and everything good and innocent inside. So going back to that scene where Edward Walker says, "You're courageous in a way that I will never know," he's essentially showing his hand to Lucius in a way that Lucius really doesn't understand. Essentially, what Edward Walker is saying there is, you're having the courage to go out into the world where I did not have the courage to stay in the world, and I sequestered myself apart from it. So the more and more I watched this film, the older I got, the more I started to understand what this film is actually about, and the more I started to understand the nuance of these characters. These are characters who genuinely started this village because they wanted to maintain some semblance of innocence and good. But the thing that ultimately brought them there is fear. It's cowardice. It's the inability to face reality and to face life's tragedies. And I think truly the thesis of this movie could be stated something like, you cannot escape human nature. You cannot escape the tragedy of this existence on earth. You can't escape it. No matter how far you run, no matter where you hide, it will always find you. And there's a line very much to that effect delivered by Brendan Gleeson in kind of the earlier parts of the movie.
You may run from sorrow as we have. Sorrow will find you. It can smell you.
And Brendan Gleeson's character, if I had to guess, is the character who becomes the most disillusioned with what they're doing there and the most kind of apathetic to the fact that they might be found out and that the village might end. There's another phenomenal line that just whizzed right over my head when I was younger and kind of confused me, actually. But now that I think I have an understanding of the movie, it's a beautiful line. And it's when Edward Walker is talking to his daughter, Ivy Walker. She's sitting on the rocking chair on their porch. And she's kind of just simmering in the tragedy of what just happened to Lucius, the person she loves. Edward Walker comes up to Ivy as she's sitting in this chair, and he says something to the effect of,
The moment I heard my daughter's vision had finally failed her, and that she would forever be blind, I was sitting in that very chair. I was so ashamed.
And for the longest time, that confused the heck out of me because I was like, why would he be ashamed that his daughter went blind? Wouldn't he be like more just sad or distraught or sorrowful? But why ashamed? And it clicked for me again as I got older, as I started to learn how to interpret movies, how to interpret what's going on. It clicked for me that he's ashamed because he's put her in this situation where she couldn't have access to medicine. They completely sequestered themselves. So they took a vow never to interact with the outside world again. And with that vow came the cessation of their ability to have modern amenities and modern treatments and modern things that would help them just in everyday life. So, why would he tell his daughter that he was ashamed the moment he learned that she had lost her sight? It's because ultimately it was his fault that she lost her sight. He was ashamed that he put her in that position. And there's even a moment in the movie where his cowardice almost serves him well. And that's in his rejection of kind of an adulterous relationship that's starting to kindle up between Sigourney Weaver's character and his character. And this is evident in that scene where he basically says, this is all I can offer you. You know, sending my daughter to get your son help is all I can do for you. That's all the further I can go. And I think, again, that's cowardice. I think if he had courage, he would he would probably just go for it. But it's because he is fearful. It's because he does not have the courage to go and do what he wants to do. That he actually ends up probably saving his own marriage and not stepping into kind of a social faux pas there. So there is really, in my opinion, a lot of nuance to this character and the thesis of this film. And it was just kind of a beautiful experience of understanding how to view a film as I grew older. So that is one of the other reasons that this film is so special to me, because I think it is really the film that I just watched it so much. I liked it so much that it gave me the opportunity to really examine it as I grew and as I matured and as I began to understand more nuance. And it really helped me to be able to pick apart movies. Not that I'm particularly expert at it now, but I think I'm a lot better than I used to be. And another reason I like this film is because I have so many fond memories of watching this movie at random times. Like I said, I have fond memories of the first time watching it with my grandma. I'm pretty sure my grandpa was there too, but I think my grandma was really the one that presented it to me. There were times when I was traveling where it was literally the only movie I had downloaded on my iPod, so I would watch it like, 2-3 times in a row. There was a time where I was attending a religious college, and the rule was that you cannot watch secular movies on campus. So what I did is they had their campus on the edge of a lake, and that lake had an island that was owned by the state of Wisconsin. And so what did I do? I kayaked with my laptop and the village out to that island. It's not campus property. I watched my movie and then I kayaked back. You got to do what you got to do. You got to watch the village. And I will say, it added to the ambiance of watching it because it kind of turned into evening as I was watching it. And I'm like on this wooded island that nobody else is on in the middle of a lake. So that was pretty cool. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room that is the reception of this movie. When it came out in 2004, I think it was marketed poorly. It seemed to be marketed as like a horror creature feature thriller. And if you're familiar with the movie, you'll know it is kind of that. But I think mainly it is a romance drama. And it definitely has thriller elements. There's some creepy moments, and it's meant to be that way. But it certainly is not just a straight horror creature feature. And if people were going into it expecting that, which I think they were based on the trailers that were around at the time,
I feel they were warning us.
I think they were going to be very disappointed. It just set them up for failure. And so I think that was part of the bad critical reception to it. And then I think there were people who just didn't get it. I really hesitate to to say this, but Roger Ebert famously said that The Village is a colossal miscalculation. And I just disagree with him. His whole review just kind of picks at how over the top prudish like this village is, and he kind of dunks on their language, and he basically just kind of makes fun of how like meek and unassuming all these people are and how boring they are. And it's like at a certain point I think that just kind of serves the thesis of the movie though, because the point is you can be as innocent and unassuming and quiet and meek as you want to be, but you're not going to escape the horrors of human nature. I think that feeds into the ultimate thesis of the movie. And then he also criticizes the twist ending And we get this gem. I have to read this to you because this, despite me not agreeing with him, this is like critical genius. This is hilarious to me. He says, eventually, the secret of those we don't speak of is revealed. To call it an anticlimax would be an insult not only to climaxes, but to prefixes. It's a crummy secret about one step up a ladder of narrative originality from It Was All a Dream. It's so witless, in fact, that when we do discover the secret, we want to rewind the film so we don't know the secret anymore. And then we keep on rewinding and rewinding until we're back at the beginning and we can get up from our seats and walk backward out of the theater, go down the up escalator, and watch the money spring from the cash register into our pockets. If that's not a good critical take, I don't know what is. He criticizes the ending and he calls basically the twist ending awful. Again, I have to disagree with him here. I think of all M. Night Shyamalan movies, and remember, that's what he's known for. He's known for the Shyamalan twist at the end of his films, mainly. Of any M. Night Shyamalan movie that I can think of, this is probably the most realistic twist in one of his films. The twist literally is just that we're not in the 1800s, we're in modern day, and that this village was set up as basically a commune experiment by a professor of history at the University of Pennsylvania, William Hurt's character, Edward Walker. I think considering the context being set in Pennsylvania, which is very popular among the Amish and Mennonite communities, I think that's a very believable twist ending. And I think it's a very effective twist ending because it shows kind of the depth and desperation of their deception and their desire for things to just be innocent and good. And it shows the lengths that they would go to try to make that happen. And the lengths that they go to try and keep innocence and goodness alive ends up resulting in lies, deception, harm, tragedy, and heartache. And at the end of the day, that is the point of the movie, in my opinion. Trying to escape the inescapable, which is human tragedy, is more often than not going to end in heartache and pain because you can't escape it. It is part of existence on this earth. And to be honest, that's a pretty bleak ending too. And it's made bleaker by the fact that, at least in the official ending of the film, they're not discovered. Ivy goes back to the village, brings the medicines, the lies are perpetuated. The ranger that has helped her get the medicine seemingly doesn't tell anybody. And so the lies, the deception, the unhealthy lifestyle that these people are living is perpetuated. And then two other things just to wrap up. These will be very quick. But the ensemble cast that is in this movie is incredible. We have William Hurt, Adrian Brody, Sigourney Weaver, Brendan Gleeson, Joaquin Phoenix, Bryce Dallas Howard. We have a lot of incredible talent acting in this movie. And the cinematography by Roger Deakins, hello, Roger Deakins, is beautiful. And then the scoring, this is my last point, the scoring by James Newton Howard. They originally had a different score, and according to M. Night Shyamalan, it was going more in the horror direction than the movie ended up going. So the movie ended up going more in this romance direction instead of the horror direction. And so the score didn't really fit anymore. So they had to completely revamp the score. They brought on a now Grammy Award-winning violinist named Hilary Hahn, and she does a phenomenal job performing the score of this movie on her violin. It is a beautiful score. It's the only movie score I own as a standalone album. I could listen to it all day. So at the end of the day, why did I make this video? I made it just because I love The Village and I wanted to talk about it. You might not find this interesting, I understand, but I am desperate for this to come out on 4K. I need to see this in the 4K format. If any of the powers that be are watching, please release this on 4K. It's been a year since I've heard anything definitive on it. I think it's coming, but I don't know. My fingers are crossed. Please release it. All right. And I'm so passionate about this film that I even recorded a little skit, which might be horrible, but it was really fun to do because I don't think I've ever exuded this amount of emotion ever in my life. And so it was kind of fun to just let something out. Let me know what you think of The Village. I'm very curious. I think it is coming back into a positive light in the collective consciousness. But let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good one. decided to do this, huh?
Yes.
You really made this decision.
Yes. I'm guilty, Robert. I've made a decision of the heart. Because I cannot look into another's eyes and see the same look that I see in August without justification. It is too painful. I cannot bear it. I have risked, and I hope I am always able to risk everything for the just and right cause. Who else is going to continue this life, this tradition? It is in the Blu-rays and the 4Ks that this way of life will continue. Now you want to see what's in my box of secrets?
Oh, heck yeah, bro.